There's going to be continued flooding.
We'll hear from the experts in depth.
Pull people out of floodplains
so that we don't have these devastating losses that cause communities to virtually implode.
From wBNG TV, this is an Action News special report.
Major floods, sometimes in a flash. They've taken lives, destroyed homes, and cost the area millions. What can be done? Tonight, the experts weigh in. This is Flood Summit 2008. I'm James Gaddis, and welcome to this wBNG TV Action News special, Flood Summit 2008. In recent years, New York has suffered through 9 major floods declared federal disaster areas, none more devastating than the June 2006 flood. No one can forget the sight of this house as it was washed down the Susquehanna River in Conklin. 6 to 13 inches of rain fell across the Twin Tiers over a 48-hour period. More than 800 homes were destroyed in Broome County alone. Lourdes Hospital in Binghamton was forced to evacuate. Patients rushed to nearby facilities. The Regency Hotel in the city suffered $1 million in damage. It has since recovered, and this February hosted Flood Summit 2008, bringing together lawmakers and experts from across New York State. The goal to develop plans to warn, respond, and prevent damage. This next hour will break it all down. Hear what those experts believe works and does not work to control the impact of flooding. Also, why one system of river monitors could become a model for the state, plus what emergency responders need to alert and rescue people. Well, we know we can't stop flooding, but those experts say we can reduce the destruction. The Watershed Management Panel discussed possible actions. We begin tonight with Action News reporter Gabe Osterhout.
There is going to be continued flooding, whether it's next year, the year after, 10 years down the road. We live in a flood-prone area.
State and local leaders want to try to minimize the damage when flooding strikes our area again. One idea is to prevent people from building in the floodplain.
When we build on the banks, when we build very close to the streams, we're going to cause homes to be flooded instead of using that floodplain for the purpose of containing those floodwaters.
Another strategy is to clean out and rebuild creeks and streams after a major flood. But it's important not to change the shape of those waterways.
When you straighten a stream, you've actually decreased the capacity for that stream to hold water. You've created a shorter stream that moves water along faster. When that happens, all of the downstream communities see more water.
After the floods in June and November 2006, many people wondered why the State Department of Environmental Conservation would not consider dredging local creeks and streams. But the DEC says dredging won't solve the problem.
Typically, it's a short-term solution. It's a Band-Aid to a larger problem. If you dredge a stream out, it could possibly improve things for one storm event.
This panel is not looking to improve things for just one event. The goal is to keep as many people as safe as possible during any flood. In Binghamton, Gabe Osterhout, wBNG TV, Action News.
Other suggestions include continuing the buyout program to create more green space near rivers and streams, also updating floodplain maps that may be outdated. Broome County is currently working on such a project. Now, New York is releasing new money to help fund flood-related projects. Before the summit began, Deputy Secretary of New York Public Safety announced a $650,000 grant program. Michael Balboni says communities can tap money for stream management plans, public education, or even training schools in flood response. Flooding over the last 4 years has cost the state $500 million for emergency response and infrastructure repairs.
So many people look at flooding as a local event, but when you consider that it has an impact on Route 88, on the thruway, on a broad swath of communities, it's not a local event, it's a state event. And that's why it's so crucial to marshal all the state agencies to make sure that they're available to assist the local municipalities.
Another critical tool is to alert people before any disaster arrives. One panel at the summit looked at various emergency alert systems. An example is the cooperative effort between Steuben, Schuyler, and Chemung counties. They have a high-tech system of rain and river gauges that provide real-time, accurate information. Emergency workers can then notify the public of any dangers. The gauge system has been in place for 25 years. Even during flash flooding, it can provide about 20 minutes notice so emergency workers can alert people in harm's way. Saving lives was the goal of the search and rescue portion of Flood Summit 2008. Action News reporter Justin Moss has more.
From air rescues in June to water rescues in November, 2006 brought 2 floods and plenty of experience for rescue workers.
Yeah, we're definitely more ready now than we were then.
Brett Chellis leads Broome County's Emergency Services Department. He says the county's taken a number of steps to prepare for another disaster.
We've had several fire departments that have stepped up their water rescue capabilities, obtained training in swift water rescue, obtained grants for equipment.
Sergeant Al Garcia is part of the New York State Police dive team. At the summit, he showed pictures of rescuing people like here in Conklin and searching for people during flash flooding last year in Delaware County, all thanks to swift water boats that can glide along water and ice.
We're hoping to acquire several more because nothing can do the job that they do in a flood situation.
Responders say a critical part of response is proper training. Brian Stevens works with the State Office of Fire Prevention and Control, which responds to disasters across New York. He says anyone can be trained to help during a disaster.
Maybe sometimes we can reach through and find folks that maybe managers of a non-emergency response entity and within government that can assist in managing.
Workers say with the right training and equipment to match, responders are ready to tackle floods in the future. In Binghamton, Justin Moss, wBNG TV, Action News.
Chellis says during the June 2006 flood, thousands of people were rescued and taken to safety. That includes more than 1,000 people who were flown out of Conklin by helicopter. And that was just a taste of what was discussed at Flood Summit 2008. When we come back, we'll have a more in-depth discussion, hear from the experts in detail on how we can better control, reduce the impact, and respond to flooding. You're watching an Action News special Flood Summit 2008. Stay with us. Welcome back to this wBNG TV Action News special Flood Summit 2008. Over the last 4 years, New York has suffered through 9 major floods, resulting in the loss of lives, homes, and businesses. The cost of these floods, $500 million was spent on response and repairs to infrastructure alone. In February, Flood Summit 2008 was held at the Regency Hotel in Binghamton. Experts gathered to develop plans to warn, respond, and prevent damage. It began with a promise from New York's Deputy Secretary of Public Safety.
Here's what I commit to you, that this is the beginning of this discussion, not the end. And that what we will do is we will move forward and perhaps do another event like this at another part of the state. But what should become very apparent to everyone in this room and to all the media that is here is that flooding may be perceived as a local issue. It is not. There's one thing that I have learned is that when you go to an area and you talk to people, it's always about their home, their business, their town. But in reality, it's about the community and the state. In the 2006 floodings, as everybody here understands, you had I-88 closed. Major parts of it washed out. You had the thruway system, the canal system. The very vibrancy of our state's transportation system was closed for a period of time as a result of the flooding. And in Colchester, perhaps the most tragic scene that I was able to go and see personally, a wall of water coming off of a mountain in the middle of the night, catching people totally unaware. A wall of water that swept away one particular home where an elderly couple were having dinner, just finished, were standing there and the house is gone. They were lost. 4 people in total were lost. And so it's not just obviously the economic or the property losses, it's the loss of life. And unfortunately, that story can be retold throughout this state. And so the question becomes, what can we do about it? Well, we first have to focus, and that is the point of today. That we bring the talent of this state together. We bring the experience, we bring the know-how, and then we reach a little bit. And we say we can do more. And of course, that reach is made a little bit harder by the difficult financial situations that we're facing as a state. We know of the deficits. We know of the lessening economy. And we know that the first thing that tends to be cut when economic times get hard is emergency response. Well, we're here today to say that's not what we're going to do. in this area because we're going to try to find inventive ways to get money into the right hands and think about how we work with our federal partners. And Regional Administrator Steve Kemp from FEMA, he's going to be one of the people that we're going to charge with the responsibility of pointing out to us how to work with Director Paulson of FEMA, how to work with the Congress. And I know we have representatives of Senator Schumer here, representatives of Congressman Maurice Hinchey here, to go to our federal partners and say, please help us. We'll tell you where we need the money. We also have to take a look at where we sit and where we live. In so many communities, the floodplain mapping is simply outdated. In some respects, we are victims of our own success. We have such a beautiful part of the nation in our state. People want to live by streams and rivers. It is the fabric, it is the culture, it is the beauty of living in rural New York. And yet, so many times, the communities, as they develop, they put up more and more blacktop. This prevents the water from being able to seep into the ground, and it exacerbates the flooding condition. And then we haven't been able to truly put this in writing or really define what this means going forward, but in the last 10 years, there's been greater severity and greater frequency of storm events. We're having more wild weather. Now, I hope that since taking over this job, I'm going to have a discussion with the guy upstairs, and that's going to stop. But maybe not. But in addition to which, there are other strategies that we can do. You know, more porous blacktops, a regional flood management group that says, all right, now what housing division are you putting in? Housing community are you doing? What is your blacktopping? What's your recharge basin availability? What is the wetland availability? What's the situation with your culverts? This is a crucial aspect of the management system, not looking back, but going forward. And then, of course, it goes to management of our current resources.
Now, that promise was followed by the hard truth. We can't stop flooding. It's likely more will eventually come our way. When Flood Summit 2008 returns, we'll hear from the experts in depth on watershed management. Find out what steps we need to take to better control and reduce the impact of flooding. We'll be right back.